It was a tense afternoon on a quiet city block, sirens wailing in the distance and flashing red lights painting the nearby buildings. Police officers in full tactical gear stood in a tight formation outside a residential apartment complex. A gunman had taken 3 people hostage. The SWAT team was getting ready to storm the building. Just beyond the yellow police tape, an old black man stood silently. His name was Robert Wilson. He was 72 years old, wearing a weathered hat and an old jacket. His eyes, though tired, watched everything around him with sharp attention. A young police officer noticed him and shouted, "Hey, Grandpa, you're in the wrong place. The nursing home is across town." The other officers laughed. They didn't see him as a man, just an old stranger who didn't belong. Robert didn't react. He didn't get angry. He just stood still, watching. The younger officer walked over and said sharply, "Sir, you need to step back. This is a restricted area." Robert nodded slowly and pointed up to one of the windows. "I live there," he said. The officer raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Sure you do. And I'm Batman. Now get out of here before I remove you myself." Robert said nothing. This wasn't the first time someone looked at him like he was invisible, like he didn't matter. He had gotten used to it. He noticed how the white residents were treated kindly, their words accepted without question. But he, an old black man, was met with jokes and suspicion. Across the street, Captain Richards, the officer in charge, stood by a police vehicle covered with blueprints and plans. He was barking orders into a phone while checking the layout of the building. Everyone was tense. The last attempt to contact the gunman had failed. Time was running out. As SWAT teams moved into position, Robert stayed where he was, watching their setup. His eyes caught small mistakes, exposed angles, gaps in cover. He shook his head quietly. "This is going to go wrong," he whispered. A month ago, Robert had noticed a strange man entering the building at odd hours. 2 weeks ago, he smelled chemicals from apartment 402. He reported it. But no one listened. No one cared. Now that same apartment was at the center of a hostage crisis. Over the radio, a voice announced, "Team ready to enter in 60 seconds." That was when Robert decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. He stepped forward and crossed the yellow tape quickly. Officers immediately ran toward him. "Stop!" one yelled. 2 others grabbed his arms. "What the hell are you doing, old man?" one snapped. Captain Richards turned, irritated by the disturbance. "Get him out of here!" But Robert looked him straight in the eye and said something that made the entire scene pause. "You'll all die if you go in there like that." His voice was calm, steady, serious. "What are you talking about?" Captain Richards asked, annoyed. Robert didn't raise his voice. "I've known this building for 40 years. I worked on it. There's a passageway between apartment 402 and 404 that's not on your blueprints. He set a trap." Captain Richards laughed dismissively. "Who is this guy?" he asked the team. "Get him away from here." "You should listen to someone before judging by appearances," Robert said quietly. "I saw the suspect carrying chemicals. I tried to warn you." "Why should we believe you?" Richards asked, almost mockingly. And that's when Robert said 5 simple words. Words that made every officer freeze in place. "Delta Force Commander, Operation Storm." A silence fell across the entire team. The captain's face changed from annoyance to confusion, then shock. The officers looked at each other, unsure what to say. Who was this man? Robert pulled out a folded paper from his coat and calmly gave a security code. "Sector 7, Access Code 497, Alpha Charlie." The captain, a young officer named Lieutenant Maya Cruz, stepped forward. She introduced herself, calm and respectful. "Negotiation specialist," she said. Robert gave her a small nod. There was something in her eyes, something different from the others. She listened. "We need to understand this building if you truly worked on it," she said. Stepped back and spoke quickly into his radio. Seconds later, his face turned pale. "Sir," Richards returned with a new tone, no longer mocking. "I apologize. We just confirmed your identity." The laughter stopped. The judgment faded. And in that moment, the old man standing before them wasn't just some stranger. He was something none of them could have imagined. He was a legend. And everything they thought they knew was about to change. As the officers stepped back, giving Robert space, the atmosphere shifted. No one laughed now. No one joked. Captain Richards ordered his men to clear the area around Robert. It was as if a curtain had been pulled back, revealing not just a man, but a lifetime of forgotten history. Robert nodded again. "Apartment 402 has a structural flaw. During construction, there was a mistake in the blueprints. There's a hollow space between 402 and 404. You won't find it on any of your plans. The gunman is probably using it. He can move without you seeing him. He can avoid your entry teams entirely." Lieutenant Cruz took notes, immediately sketching out a new layout. Lieutenant Carter, the same young officer who had mocked Robert earlier, stepped forward with clear annoyance in his voice. "So now we're trusting an old man with our operation," he muttered. "What next? Let him lead the SWAT team?" Captain Richards didn't respond. He was still absorbing everything. Then came a message from inside the building. "The suspect is asking to speak to someone named Wilson," the officer on the radio said. "He's refusing to talk to anyone else." All eyes turned to Robert. "Do you know him?" Richards asked, his voice hushed. Robert's answer was calm. "Simon Mercer. We served together. A long time ago." Lieutenant Cruz blinked. "You knew he would ask for you, didn't you?" Robert didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked toward the building and said, "I've been watching him for weeks. He left signs. Signs only someone like me would notice. The chemicals, the components, the timing. They were messages." "You think this was all planned?" asked Cruz. "No," Robert replied. "I think he's desperate." Captain Richards stepped closer. "We'll set up a safe location for you to talk to him. We'll use the radio from here." Robert shook his head slowly. "That won't work. Mercer won't fall for that." "Why not?" "Because I trained him." That single sentence silenced the command post again. "I trained him. Operation Black Hawk, 1987. He was my best student. Until Beirut." Cruz quickly searched for records. "There's no record of any operation in Beirut." Robert looked at her and said quietly, "Exactly." Lieutenant Carter laughed bitterly. "This is nonsense. Secret missions, unconfirmed pasts. We can't base decisions on stories." "We already confirmed his identity," Richards snapped back. "If he says he trained the suspect, then we believe him." Carter looked frustrated but stayed quiet. Robert examined the blueprints. "I need a communicator, a vest, and 10 minutes. If I'm not out in 15, do what you have to do." "You're not seriously going in there," Richards said, alarmed. "I am," Robert said, "because Mercer won't trust anyone else." They outfitted him in silence. No one spoke. No one dared question him now. As he tested his gear, Robert felt the familiar pull of pain in his knee, a reminder of the grenade that nearly ended his career, a wound that still throbbed, but he carried it like an invisible medal. He walked toward the building, step by steady step. Carter watched through binoculars and muttered, "He's walking to his death." "No," Cruz whispered. "He's speaking the same language as the hostage-taker." Robert entered the building without hesitation. He didn't crouch. He didn't sneak. He walked like a man going home. At the 4th floor, he stopped in front of apartment 402. He called out, steady and calm, "Simon, it's me, Wilson." A moment of silence. Then a voice behind the door, dry, shaky. "Commander, is that really you? In the flesh, open the door. How do I know this isn't a trap?" Robert smiled faintly. "Eagle 7, November Alpha," a pause, then the sound of locks turning. The door cracked open. There stood Simon Mercer, his face aged and hollow, eyes wild with fear and pain. "Commander," he said, almost as if seeing a ghost. "They said you were dead." "Almost," Robert replied. "Let me in." Inside the room, 3 hostages sat on the floor, bound but alive, unharmed. Robert took in the entire space with a single glance. 2 explosive devices, motion sensors on every entrance, everything done by someone who knew exactly how to make it count. And across from him, a man who once followed his orders, now lost, now broken, now holding the detonator in his shaking hand. The apartment was quiet. The hostages sat frozen, afraid to move. Simon Mercer stood by the window, clutching the detonator like a lifeline. His hands trembled. His eyes twitched with the strain of old memories. "They abandoned us, Commander," he said, his voice heavy with pain. "After Beirut, they erased us, denied we ever existed. No records, no help, no answers." Robert looked at him with steady eyes. "I know. I had to fake my own death just to survive," Simon said, laughing bitterly. "But the voices, they never stopped. I can't sleep. I can't breathe. They're always there." Robert slowly took a seat across from him. "I saw you weeks ago," he said softly. "I recognized the patterns, the things you were bringing in. You weren't just planning an attack. You were sending signals. You wanted someone to notice." Simon's expression twitched. "And you were the only one who did. Because I knew what to look for." Outside, Lieutenant Carter was pacing. "He's not coming back," he insisted to Captain Richards. "The negotiation has failed. We need to go in now." "We still have 7 minutes," Cruz protested. "We can't risk more lives because of some old man's pride," Carter snapped. "We have a job to do." He barked orders at the SWAT team. "Prepare for entry. We're breaching in 3 minutes." Inside the apartment, Robert kept his voice calm and even. "They're getting ready to storm the building," he told Simon. "If they do, everyone in this room will die, including you." Simon's finger tightened around the detonator. "They won't take me. I've wired every entrance. 1 step inside, and we're gone." Robert nodded. "I taught you well." Simon gave a small, twisted smile. "Too well." "But you forgot something," Robert said quietly. Simon frowned. "What?" "I always told you, never trust a building's blueprints. Always check for hidden passages." Simon's eyes widened. Too late. In one smooth motion, Robert lunged across the room. No hesitation, no sign of his age, just speed, precision, strength. In 3 seconds, the detonator was out of Simon's hand. Robert rolled back, clutching the device, keeping it away from any accidental trigger. Simon stood frozen, defeated, his breath heavy. Outside, SWAT was already moving toward the entrance. Carter shouted, "Move! Move! We're going in!" Suddenly, the radios crackled to life. A calm voice spoke 5 words that froze the entire team in place. "Black Lamb, abort, immediately, explosives." Captain Richards' eyes snapped toward the radio. He knew that voice. Robert Wilson. Carter looked around, confused. "What's going on? Keep moving!" But one of the senior SWAT members stopped and pulled off his helmet. "That code, it's Delta Protocol. It's only used in extreme emergencies, nuclear or chemical threats. It's real." "But he's just one man," Carter shouted. "Number, he's not," the officer replied. "He's Commander Wilson." At that moment, the apartment door opened. Robert Wilson stepped out, calm, unshaken. Behind him, the 3 hostages followed, still in shock but unharmed. And then came Simon Mercer, head bowed, silent, hands cuffed. The night was still. Police officers stared as the man they had mocked, dismissed as nothing but a confused old man, walked out having done what their entire team couldn't. Robert handed the detonator and a small notebook to Captain Richards. This, he said, was 3 weeks of planning. Enough explosives to destroy half the block. He didn't need bullets. He needed help. Captain Richards stared down at the notebook. His voice was hushed. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to," Robert replied. Behind them, Carter stood frozen, pale, watching in disbelief. His arrogance crumbled into silence. And then, something remarkable happened. One by one, the most experienced officers on the team stepped forward. They didn't call him Sir. They didn't call him Mr. They called him Commander, the same title they gave legends. And from that moment on, no one saw Robert Wilson the same way again. By the next morning, Robert Wilson's name was on every local news channel. Headlines read, "Forgotten Hero Saves Hostages." Man everyone ignored becomes a legend overnight. Photos showed Robert standing next to the mayor, receiving a medal in a quiet ceremony. The same man who had been mocked just hours before was now being honored for his bravery. But for Robert, it wasn't about medals. It was never about recognition. The police department, however, wasn't celebrating. A storm of criticism erupted. Videos taken by bystanders had gone viral. They showed exactly how Robert had been treated, laughed at, pushed aside, humiliated. "Hey, Grandpa" had become a symbol of institutional prejudice. The clip of Carter mocking Robert spread across social media like wildfire. An internal investigation began immediately. Lieutenant Carter was removed from duty and placed under review for misconduct and negligence. His record revealed years of behavior that had gone unchecked, disrespect, arrogance, and a long list of complaints that had been buried. But that wasn't the end. A week later, Robert received a phone call that surprised even him. "This is the National Security Director," the voice on the other end said. "We need to talk about your military record and about Simon Mercer." Robert sat quietly in a federal office the next day, facing a panel of high-ranking officers. On a large screen, a document appeared, classified files, hidden from the public, full of names, dates, and forgotten missions. And one painful truth: Simon Mercer wasn't the only one. Dozens of veterans like him had been abandoned after secret operations, their records erased, their trauma untreated. The Beirut incident, it never officially existed, their lives never documented. "And neither do you," the director admitted, his voice low. Robert nodded. "And now you want to fix it, because the truth went public." "We need your help," the director said. "You trained these men. You know how they think. Some may be planning similar acts. We need to find them before it's too late." Robert looked at the faces in front of him. The same system that once erased him was now begging for his help. "I'll help," he said, "but on one condition: a complete reintegration and treatment program for every abandoned operative, retroactive medical benefits, real support, real recognition." The room went silent. "That would cost millions," one officer said. Robert leaned forward, his voice sharp but calm. "And how many lives will it cost if you don't?" 3 months later, a discreet building in the city center opened its doors. No signs, no headlines, just a simple name: the Tempest Program. Robert Wilson, now Director of Operations, personally oversaw every detail. He met with every forgotten veteran, tracked them down, spoke to them like only a fellow soldier could. And Simon Mercer wasn't sent to prison. He was the program's first patient, He began therapy, got medical treatment, support, the beginnings of healing. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Carter was officially demoted. The investigation confirmed a pattern of discrimination, abuse of authority. He was reassigned to an administrative post in a rural town, his dreams of leadership gone. But the impact of what happened that night didn't stop there. The police department rewrote its training protocols. Robert's story became a case study, used in workshops, briefings, and presentations across the country. Observation, respect, bias awareness. Months passed. Robert stayed quiet as he always had. He didn't seek fame. He didn't want applause. But one day, Lieutenant Cruz stopped by his office. She had a question. "How did you know Mercer would choose that building?" she asked. Robert looked at her and smiled. That was the apartment he lived in during training, 35 years ago. Same floor, same unit. Patterns always tell a story, if you're paying attention. Cruz nodded, slowly understanding. "The department is changing," she said. "Your story is already making a difference." "It's not enough to change policies," Robert replied. "You have to change hearts." And for the first time in years, he believed, maybe that was finally possible. 6 months after that unforgettable night, something unexpected happened. The city police department held a quiet ceremony, not for the media, not for headlines, but for change. A new training hall was dedicated and named in his honor, Wilson Hall, a place where recruits would learn not just tactics, but observation, respect, and the power of seeing what others overlook. The new police chief stood beside Robert and handed him a folder. "Since we launched the new protocols," he said, "incidents of police violence are down by 40%. Complaints of discrimination have been cut in half." He paused. A single voice can change a system. Robert stood still, quiet as always. No big speech, no thank you tour. He accepted the folder with the same quiet strength he had shown from the beginning.
That night, back in his modest apartment, Robert placed a new photograph on the wall. Right next to the old black and white pictures from his military years, he added one more, a photo of him receiving a civilian Medal of Honor, and standing next to him, the 3 hostages he had saved. None of them would ever fully understand how close they came to dying that night, or how much they owed to a man they had never even noticed before. And for Robert, that was enough. Days later, while teaching a class at Wilson Hall, something unexpected happened. A man in the back row caught his attention. He was quiet, still, dressed like the other new trainees, but something was different. After class, the man approached. No rank on his chest, no badge yet, just a quiet look in his eyes. It was Carter, the same Carter who once called him Grandpa in front of the entire SWAT team, the man who mocked, doubted, and nearly ruined everything. "I requested a transfer to this training," Carter said quietly. "I thought maybe I needed to learn how to observe better." Robert looked at him, long and hard. There was no anger in his eyes, no pride, just clarity. "Observation," Robert finally said, "begins when you let go of your certainties." Then he nodded. "Welcome." That afternoon, as he drove home, Robert thought about how strange life was, how a crisis can reveal who we really are. Some people, like Carter, need to fall hard to finally understand. Others, like Cruz, just need a reason to believe in something better. And as the city lights flickered in the rearview mirror, Robert felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. He parked his car, opened his door, and stepped inside his quiet home. The one place that had never asked for medals, never demanded explanations. On his desk was a single card, sent from Simon Mercer. It read only 2 words: "Thank you." Robert placed the card inside the same folder the mayor had given him, then tucked it away. His work wasn't finished. But for the first time in decades, it felt like the world was finally ready to listen. And printed across the entrance of the Tempest program, Etched into the wall where all could see were 5 simple words. Words that had once frozen a SWAT team in place, now redefined as a promise for every new recruit who walked through those doors. Respect is not a rank, because in the end, Robert Wilson never needed to raise his voice to be heard. He never needed power to be powerful. All he needed was dignity, and he carried it like a shield, until the world finally remembered who he was.